I had just settled into my evening routine when the doorbell rang 3 times in rapid succession. On the porch stood Madison, Karen's 16-year-old daughter, clutching her phone like a lifeline. She wore the kind of smug expression only years of watching her mother dominate HOA meetings could produce. "I need your Wi-Fi password," she announced flatly, skipping over any greeting. Her phone screen showed a TikTok upload frozen at 12%. My mom cut off my mobile data, and I have followers waiting. "You have to let me use your internet." I blinked at her audacity. "Excuse me?" "Your Wi-Fi password," she repeated slowly, as if I were the one struggling to understand. "I can see your network from my room. It's full bars. I'll just use it for a few minutes to post my videos." "Madison, I'm not giving you my private Wi-Fi password," I said evenly. "That's not how this works." Her face twisted into the same indignant scowl I'd seen countless times on her mother. "Are you serious right now? It's just the internet. It's not like it costs you anything extra." "It's my internet," I explained, keeping my patience intact. "I pay for it. You'll have to work things out with your parents about your phone privileges." Madison's eyes narrowed. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling the cops for being unreasonable." She spun on her heel and stomped across my lawn, shouting over her shoulder, "You're going to get arrested for this." I watched her march back to the oversized colonial across the street, the one where her mother, Karen Peton, ruled as HOA president. For 3 years, Karen had treated our neighborhood like her personal kingdom, twisting every guideline into a decree and every neighbor into a subject. Clearly, her daughter had inherited both the entitlement and the theatrics. This whole standoff had started because Madison had been grounded. After sneaking out one night, Karen had punished her by blocking mobile data. But Madison had built thousands of TikTok followers, and in her teenage mind, online clout outweighed real-world consequences. I'd already noticed her skulking around the neighborhood in search of Wi-Fi signals, even parking outside the community center at night to leech off their network. The next morning, she returned, attitude dialed up another notch. "Look, I talked to my mom, and she agrees you should share your Wi-Fi," she declared, arms crossed. "It's basically community service. Everyone should have internet access." I almost laughed. "Madison, your mom doesn't decide how I use my private connection." "You're being selfish," she shot back, her voice hitting a pitch only teenagers and car alarms achieve. "I have important content to post, and you're just hoarding bandwidth like some kind of internet miser." "I'm using the service I pay for. That's how utilities work," I replied, her expression soured. "This is discrimination. You can't just deny a resident their rights." "What rights, exactly?" I asked. "The right to internet access. It's a basic human need." Before I could respond to that bold new interpretation of human rights law, she was already tapping away on her phone. Minutes later, I found an official HOA violation notice stuffed in my mailbox. On Karen's personal HOA letterhead, it accused me of failing to demonstrate community spirit and of refusing reasonable neighbor assistance. It warned a formal hearing if I didn't reconsider my position on shared community resources. I had to admire Karen's speed, if not her reasoning. Somehow, in under 20 minutes, my private Wi-Fi had been reclassified as a community resource. By that afternoon, a second letter arrived, this one claiming I was fostering neighborhood discord and violating the spirit of cooperative living. By evening, letter number 3 threatened potential legal action for withholding services from residents. Karen's imagination, it seemed, was just getting warmed up. I'd dealt with Karen's warped ideas of HOA authority before, but this was a new level of absurd. She truly seemed convinced that her daughter's Wi-Fi crisis qualified as a community emergency. The breaking point came the next morning when Madison showed up at my door again, phone in hand and already dialed. "Last chance," she announced, her tone dripping with drama. "Give me the password, or I'm calling 911. I stared at her. "You're going to call emergency services over Wi-Fi? You're withholding public utilities," she shot back, reciting the phrase like she'd memorized it from one of her mother's HOA manuals. "That's probably illegal." "Madison, Wi-Fi is not a public utility. Yes, it is. The internet is like electricity or water now. Everyone needs it, so you have to share it. I watched in morbid fascination as she actually pressed the call button. This was either going to be the shortest 911 call in history or the most embarrassing. 911, what's your emergency? Came the dispatcher's voice. Hi, my neighbor is withholding public utilities from me, Madison said, trying to sound official. He won't give me his Wi-Fi password, and I think that's against the law. A pause followed, heavy with disbelief. Ma'am, the dispatcher asked, is this a life-threatening emergency? Well, no, but... Are you currently without power, water, or gas service to your home? No, but I need internet for my social media, and he's being really unreasonable about it. I could practically hear the dispatcher's professionalism straining at the seams. Ma'am, private Wi-Fi networks are not public utilities. I'm going to have an officer speak with you about the proper use of emergency services. Madison's confident facade cracked. Wait, what? 15 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. Officer Rodriguez stepped out, wearing the look of someone who'd just drawn the short straw for the day's strangest call. Madison ran to him immediately. Officer, thank goodness you're here. This man is refusing to share his internet with the community. That has to be illegal, right? Rodriguez glanced between us, clearly struggling to process what he'd just heard. Son, can you explain what's going on? I gave him the quick version. Madison's door-to-door Wi-Fi crusade, Karen's rapid-fire violation letters, and the latest threat to have me arrested for not handing over my password. So, let me get this straight, Rodriguez said slowly. You called 911 because your neighbor won't give you his Wi-Fi password. Madison's confidence was evaporating fast. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds bad, but... Ma'am, Rodriguez cut in, Wi-Fi is private property. It's not a public utility. Your neighbor has no obligation whatsoever to share it with you. That's when Karen's voice sliced through the air like a buzzsaw. Officer, thank goodness you're here. Karen came striding across the street, HOA president badge gleaming on her blazer like it was a badge of actual legal authority. This man has been causing nothing but trouble in our community, she declared. Rodriguez turned toward her. And you are... Karen Peton, HOA president. She announced with the self-importance of a queen introducing herself to a subject. This resident has been flagrantly violating our community obligations and refusing to cooperate with reasonable neighbor requests. Ma'am, Rodriguez asked calmly, what specific obligations require someone to share their private Wi-Fi? Karen faltered for the briefest moment, then pushed forward. It's about community spirit. We all need to support each other. Hoarding resources is selfish. Mrs. Peton, Rodriguez said patiently, private internet service is not a community resource. Your neighbor has no legal obligation to share his password. Karen's face darkened to an impressive shade of red. But my daughter needs internet access. What kind of neighborhood doesn't support its young people? The kind where people respect private property. I said quietly. Karen whirled on me. Don't you dare lecture me about private property. I've been documenting your violation for days. Officer, I demand you do something about this. Rodriguez's patience was clearly thinning. Ma'am, filing false reports is a misdemeanor. Your daughter called 911 claiming someone was withholding public utilities. That is factually incorrect. Madison went pale. Wait, I could get in trouble? Yes, ma'am, Rodriguez replied firmly. Misuse of emergency services is taken very seriously. Officer Rodriguez said firmly. Karen immediately tried to backpedal. Now, hold on, officer. My daughter was just confused about the technicalities. Surely we can work this out reasonably. Mrs. Peton, Rodriguez replied, tone sharp. I'm documenting this incident. If there are any more false reports or harassment over this Wi-Fi issue, charges will be filed. By then, half the neighborhood had gathered. Mrs. Chin stood on her porch discreetly recording the scene, while the Johnsons across the street peered out from behind their curtains. Karen, realizing she had an audience, shifted her tone to something more desperate. This is all being blown out of proportion. We're just trying to resolve a simple community issue. Ma'am, Rodriguez cut her off. There is no community issue here. This is a private property matter. You have no authority to force anyone to share their internet service. Madison's bravado had completely vanished. Am I going to get arrested? She asked nervously. Not today, Rodriguez said. But this is a formal warning. Any future false reports will result in charges. Karen's face cycled through several shades of red as the reality sank in. Her daughter was one step away from criminal charges. Her HO authority meant nothing to actual law enforcement, and half the neighborhood had witnessed her humiliation. This is outrageous, she sputtered. I'm going to file a complaint with your supervisor. That's your right, ma'am, Rodriguez said calmly as he finished his report. But the facts won't change. Wi-Fi is private property. With that, he drove off, leaving Karen and Madison to retreat back across the street in defeat. But the damage was done. That evening, Mrs. Chen's video hit the neighborhood group chat. Within hours, everyone had seen Karen's attempt to strong-arm me into community Wi-Fi and Madison's ill-fated 911 stunt. By the next day, the gossip had turned into action. Tom Harrison, the HOA's vice president, called me directly. His tone was grim. We need to talk about Karen. The board is calling an emergency meeting. 3 days later, the HOA gathered for a special session. Karen arrived looking defiant, but the board members were done indulging her power trips. Tom opened with a motion to remove her as president, citing abuse of authority and the negative attention she'd brought to the community. This is a witch hunt. Karen snapped. I was just enforcing community standards. Karen, said Sarah Williams, another board member, you try to force a resident to share his private internet. That's not a standard. That's harassment. The vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, Karen Peton was no longer HOA president. Meanwhile, the community center issued its own ruling. Madison was banned from their facilities for 30 days for misusing emergency services. The teenager who'd been so sure of her rights was finally facing real consequences. That night, I couldn't resist one last jab. I updated my Wi-Fi network name to No Free TikToks Here. Across the street, Karen's house went dark early, the former HOA queen now too embarrassed to face her neighbors. In a single week, Karen had lost her title, her authority, and her reputation, all because she couldn't accept that some things simply aren't hers to claim.